Ever had a Karen measure your grass gate creek? Paper slaps a stake into my lawn. Violation PO 12-07 while she smirks at my mailbox. She says we're annexed fined 10 grand and blocked from privileges like my driveway needs permission. Neighbors stare hotter than my mower's exhaust. So I pull the deed and lawsuit packet badge clip flashing under the porch light. Recorder on paper stamp drops. Cindy files a lien on their office in daylight. Next week, mics click. The listing disappears. Clubhouse goes dark. Anyway, we finish it on record, then roll into Chapter 1. The sound of gravel crunching under tires cut through the quiet of my Saturday morning. A black SUV slowed to a stop in front of my house. I wiped sweat from my brow, half bent over my mower, the smell of cut grass heavy in the air. A woman in heels stepped out, clipboard tucked against her blazer mouth, tight as a stapled folder. Without a word, she crossed the curb heel marks, stabbing my lawn, and drove a metal stake into the ground beside my mailbox. A red tag fluttered in the morning wind. HOA Violation Office. Copy filed 4112-07. Excuse me. I straightened mower engine, coughing out its last breath. You're on my property. She didn't blink. Mr. Turner, your account is in arrears. $10,000 initiation fee unpaid since the annexation vote. Annexation, I built this house before you people even paved the street. She smirked, the kind that said she'd rehearsed it. Bylaw revision, Article 9. Every homeowner benefits from community maintenance. Lady, I am community maintenance. Mark, my neighbor, leaned over the fence, still in his grease-stained work shirt. Everything okay, Tom? She's posting a notice. Official, the woman snapped. Filed with the county clerk this morning. Here not and 207. Her hand left the stake like a priest finishing a sermon. The tag gleamed under the sun. Office copy filed. Minnie Cliff 11. 250W. The mower's idle click stopped. Even the birds went silent. I took out my phone, framing her SUV plate in the viewfinder. Smile for the record. She froze. Are you threatening me? Recording evidence? The camera caught her badge. Karen Stevens, President, Willow Creek, HOA. Mark muttered, Here we go again. Karen lifted her chin. Non-compliance incurs lien within 30 days. You can't annex a deed. I said, voice steadier than my pulse. Sir, that document belongs to my soil, not your board. I pressed my boot against the stake, feeling its wobble. She gasped as if I'd kicked a holy relic. Tampering with an official notice. Posting it was the trespass. I pulled my foot back, slow measured. Pressed, not pushed. Behind her, the SUV engine idled, exhaust ghosting against the morning air. My reflection in its tinted glass looked older, shoulders squared, like they had to carry more than tools today. I walked toward the porch, coffee still steaming beside the wrench set. My hands trembled just enough to make the mug clink. Karen, I'm calling the sheriff's office. You stay right there. She folded her arms. Do what you have to do, Mr. Turner, Mark whispered. Tom, don't. They'll drag you through committees for months. No, let's get this logged right. I dialed. The dispatcher's voice came thin through static. Willow Creek Sheriff. What's the emergency trespass? False notice filed, part on 2-07. Send a unit. Minnie, Cliff, number 2, 500,000 W. The dispatcher repeated, 1207. That code again. Yeah, it's on a metal stake sitting in my lawn. A pause. Copy that. Dispatch ETA 30. Karen turned on her heel, marching to the SUV. She opened a folder across the hood, pretending not to listen. I heard paper crackle, the faint hiss of a printed map, parcel lines overlaid like scars. You might want to stand clear, I said. Deputy won't like you rearranging exhibits. She ignored me, lips moving as she rehearsed the script of someone certain she wouldn't lose. Mark stepped closer. 10 grand. For mowing your own yard, they call it community entry fee. That's theft. That's paperwork. I exhaled. And that's what wins these fights. He looked at the stake, the number Parhard 12-07 stamped twice, then at me. You really going to take her on? Wouldn't be the first system that underestimated a maintenance man. The breeze carried the smell of hot asphalt and lilacs from the next yard. Karen's SUV door thumped shut, her reflection shrinking as she climbed in. The stake quivered slightly, sun catching on its tag like a blade. I knelt beside it, tracing the emboss with my thumb. Filed, 312-07, office copy. It wasn't just an insult, it was a blueprint. Somewhere behind that code lay the same paper she'd wave in meetings stamped by clerks who never left their desks. Tom Mark said quietly, "You sure about this? I'm sure they filed that code in every county office they could. Then what now?" I looked back at the SUV rolling away. "Now I build a record stronger than theirs." He nodded. "That's going to take time and evidence. Good thing I've got both." Minnie Cliff number 3, 750W. The gate beeped as it closed behind her. The same sound echoed later in every recording I'd gather. I took a photo of the stake again, zoomed in on the seal, the date stamp catching 0317. Filed 412-07, received 03:17 a.m. The county clerk's number printed faint at the bottom. I smiled, proof of overreach hiding in plain sight. I pocketed the phone, wiped the sweat from my hands, and looked at my lawn, my line in the sand. "They can file all they want," I said to Mark, "but the ground still answers to the deed." The coffee had gone cold, the air heavier with something electric. Somewhere between outrage and resolve, I knew the paper war had just begun. Dispatcher's final call crackled unit en route. ETA 25. "Good," I whispered. "Let's get this in writing." The flag on the mailbox stood up like a finger wagging at me. 2 weeks had passed since the stake. I walked out with a mug of reheated coffee and the smell of barbecue drifting from a neighbor's yard. Inside the box sat a single envelope. Thick cream stock, windowed the kind that pretends to be a tax notice. Across the front, immediate response required. "Sarah," I called, holding it up. She stepped onto the porch, hair-knotted pen behind her ear. Another one. First official-looking one. I slid it with my thumb and unfolded 2 pages of dense print and hungry lines. Willow Creek Residential Community Association Integration Fee. Adjustment, $15,000 due within 48 hours. She exhaled through her nose. "They escalated. They miscalculated," I said. "We're not in their map." "Call Greg," she said. "He warned you this would happen." I texted him a photo. He replied in 10 seconds, "Post office in 10. Bring the deed." Sarah squeezed my arm. "Don't go alone. I'm not." The post office smelled like ink and damp cardboard. People lined up with padded mailers and grandmother handwriting. Greg was already at the counter with a roll of tape and that precise calm he wore like a uniform. He tapped the envelope. 15 grand for entry. "You know what that is? Extortion in serif font." He nodded toward the bulletin board where a county plat hung in plastic. "Karen did this to the Johnsons before they sold." Same phrasing, same timeline. Sarah's eyes moved over the letter. "They cite 412-07 again." "Of course they do," Greg said. "It's the anchor on their fake map." I set our deed on the counter. The clerk glanced up and slid a laminated magnifier toward us like she'd seen this movie. We spread the papers under the glow of buzzing lights, the glass making everything look colder. "Okay," I said. "Lot 27B, coordinates, bearings, distances here." I traced with my finger. "Our boundary pin west corner, 30 feet off the street." Greg opened his laptop and pulled up the county GIS portal. "Here's the official plat overlay." He toggled a layer and colored lines bled across the screen: cul-de-sacs, easements, HOA boundaries. Zooming in. Willow Creek, HOA. "Watch this." The boundary blinked and slid right like someone had nudged it with a mouse in the middle of the night. Sarah frowned. "That can't be live. It's cached," Greg said. "But look," he pulled up revision history. "There's a change entry 6 months ago, 3 days before the Johnsons got their first notice. By who I asked." He scrolled, jaw tight. "User ID, WCR, admin, Stevens." Sarah didn't breathe for a second. "Karen, or someone using her credential," Greg said. "But the pattern's the same." A postal clerk leaned over, curious. "You folks need the county's copy." "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Is there a public terminal?" She pointed to a corner kiosk shaped like a thin vending machine. Greg emailed himself a high-res overlay. The printer coughed out pages that still smelled warm. He laid our deed atop the plat edges aligned and taped the corners to the counter. "Now," he said, "we stack truth over wishful thinking." He drew the pen along our boundary. Lot 27B, deeded 20 years before Willow Creek filed their covenants. Your west pin here. He tapped the small circle drawn like a punched hole. The HOA line should end here, 2 lots shy. Sarah whispered, "Do you see it?" We all saw it. The shade for Willow Creek crept over our rectangle like a spill swallowing the pin and stopping short of the gutter. "That line overlaps our lot," I said. "It's impossible without tampering. Mini Cliff number 1. The printer restarted on its own, spitting a second copy as if the county itself wanted a duplicate for court. Sarah took my phone and snapped a photo of the taped layers, the date on the kiosk screen, the clerk in the background. "Chain of custody," she said. "Start now." I nodded. "Greg, why would she risk an edit this obvious?" He shrugged. "Because fear is fast and rebuttals are slow." I looked down at the letter and felt the heat rise not from anger, but from insult. Fees love fear. We don't. The clerk slid a rubber stamp across to me. "We can't notarize, but we can mark received for your records. Please." The stamp thunked into the corner of the printout. Received window 2, 11:13 a.m. Sarah pointed to a paragraph in the letter. "What's neighborhood privileges?" Greg made a face. "That's the hook. Pool fobs, pavilion trash, pickup priority. Sounds nice until they use it as leverage." "And we don't even use any of it," I said. "You don't have to," he said. "The threat lives in the inbox." Mini Cliff number 2. A kid at the counter dropped a box. The crash made half the room jump. Our overlay held tape edges tight. No one in that line would remember us, but the camera above the scale would, and that would matter. Next step, Sarah said calm and cutting. "We email Cindy the overlay, the stamp, and the letter. We draft a statement for the county. Plus, your 911 call log from 2 weeks ago," Greg added. "Let her connect R12 or 7 to every piece." I folded the deed, slipped it into a plastic sleeve, and tucked the stamped overlay behind it. The envelope went back into its sheath like a blade back into a scabbard. Outside, the sky was a hard blue. The smell of barbecue got stronger. On the sidewalk, Greg lowered his voice. "There's a developer behind this. Horizon West. Karen consults for them unofficially." Sarah's jaw set. "How sure?" "Sure enough to say it here," he said, glancing at the camera above the door. "They buy cheap. They sell HOA clean. Karen clears the path. I watched a family carry a birthday banner past the window. Normal lives, normal errands. Ours could be again if we didn't blink. We do this clean," I said. "We keep it legal. We keep it public." Sarah slipped her hand into mine. "We keep it recorded. Send me everything Greg said. I'll mirror the files in the cloud and on a drive. 2 copies. 1 off-site." He was IT to the bone. I was maintenance to the bone. The combination felt steady. We stepped into the sun. The mailbox flag still stood up at home in my head, a bright finger reminding me that failure loves paperwork as much as justice does. I unfolded the letter once more on the hood of the truck. My shadow crossed the paragraph near the bottom, the one written to sound polite. I read it aloud, each word slow enough to stick to the air. "Privileges revoked." The county records office breathed in humming fluorescent loops. Dust hung in the light like slow snow. A microfilm reader waited on a metal cart, its glass eye aimed at a wall of gray drawers. Cindy Hahn leaned back in a hard chair and studied me over the top of her legal pad. Then, let's see what she forged. "Tell me where to start." "Chain of custody first," she said. "Date, time, source." She clicked her pen. "Record everything paper outlives noise." I slid the envelope with the overlay across the table. Our deed followed page edges crisp from the plastic sleeve. A clerk in a navy vest rolled up, pushing the cart with the reader. He set a cardboard box beside us, the label hand-printed, "Willow Creek Amendments and Votes." Pulled what you asked, he said. Maps, addenda vote tallies. Appreciate it, Cindy said. We'll need stamps on anything we copy. Window 3. He pointed at a small booth. If you see pink paper that's internal, don't copy pink. He left us with the whir of a fan and the steady tick of a wall clock. Cindy snapped on a pair of cotton gloves and passed me another pair. Gloves, I asked. Sometimes ink tells a story, she said. We don't smudge a confession. We opened the box. Inside, plat maps smelled like old binders and damp winters. She fed the first roll of microfilm into the reader and cranked the handle. White frames breezed by until parcel grids sharpened into place crosshairs on a landscape I recognized too well. There I said, Lot 27B. Cindy zoomed index finger hovering above the glass. Pre-HOA record. Original bearings. She reached for our stamped overlay and laid it beside the screen, matching corners like she was dressing a wound. Now the amended map. Another roll dropped in the cart, trembling as she threaded the leader under the lens. The amended plat came up with the same neat fonts and a bolder outline. Shifted. The Willow Creek shade bulged like a bruise. She frowned. Show me the revision history. I scrolled. Dates paraded. 6 months ago, a timestamp flared, 03:17 a.m. Cindy's pen stopped. Why are they filing boundary amendments at 3 in the morning? Because no one argues with a clerk at 3 in the morning. She nodded toward window 3. We need that stamp on our complaint. The clerk returned with a cold bottle of water and a sympathetic look. Y'all need anything else? Sign-in sheets, Cindy said. For the HOA vote that supposedly expanded borders. He sifted another folder. Here. Names filled the page in mismatched inks. Cindy read aloud softly the way a mechanic listens to a rattle. Halfway down, her finger paused. These two, she said. I know those surnames. They sold last year, moved out of county. Why are they signing 3 months ago? I leaned closer. The loops and slants looked neat enough to pass, but the addresses listed a subdivision 3 towns away. The fluorescent ballast buzzed, strobed, steadied. Could be a proxy, I said. Could be a forgery, she answered. Either way, it's fraud if weaponized against a deed. She slid the page into a clear sheet protector. We'll copy it, but I want the office to know what we're doing. We carried the stack to the glass booth. The clerk watched us align edges against the copier's lip. Every click and whir became a ledger entry in my head. Copy made, reader present, clerk observed. Cindy stamped, received on our complaint packet and let me ink the time. The digital clock on the booth read 03:17 a.m. for the filing we'd found. Our present time landed beside it in blue. She smiled without warmth. Symmetry is useful. Tell me again how we move this, I said. We file the complaint into the county system, she said, voice even. We attach the overlay, the vote sheet, the amended plat, and your 911 call number. We request immediate review and preservation of records. And if they ignore us, she capped her pen. Then we escalate. Subpoena if needed. But first we put them on notice that we're watching. The microfilm reader hummed while I cranked through another roll labeled easements. A faded memo appeared letterhead from the HOA authorizing mailbox interventions. Cindy photographed the frame capturing the memo number and the filing footer. Add it, she said. Intent matters. The clerk called from the counter. You'll want these too. He held up a packet tied with string notary attestations. We spread the attestations out like playing cards. A notary stamp repeated across them neat circles, crisp emboss. But the commission number didn't match the name on one page. Cindy lifted her eyes to me, the first flicker of something like satisfaction. There you are. What am I looking at, Sloppy? She said. They swapped a seal from a prior commission. It's a mismatch by a single digit. That's how bad forgery happens, so sure no one will look. Maybe no one has, I said. Until now. She arranged the evidence in a grid and presented me the top sheet. Complaint, Tom. Read and sign. I cleared my throat. Tom Turner, owner of Lot 27B, believes Willow Creek HOA submitted forged or improperly witnessed documents to shift boundaries over private property. Keep it factual, she said, and include your remedy. I wrote, "We request immediate injunctive review and preservation of all Willow Creek records. We will file through my law firm's trust account. If they use their office to threaten, we'll seize it back legally." Cindy nodded. "We'll do this by the book." At window 3, the clerk positioned our packet under the date had smiled like he'd stamped 1,000 disappointments and a few small victories. Thunk. Complaint. Received. 03:17. Window 3. We waited while he scanned the pages. The whine of the feeder slowed, then clicked out a confirmation slip. The floor vibrated faintly as a cart rolled past the building's bones, settling into their afternoon rhythm. Cindy leaned in, voice low. "Say it on the record." I tapped my phone and opened the recorder. Karen Stevens and the Willow Creek HOA filed a boundary revision that puts Charter 1207 over my lot. The signers include names that don't live here. The clerk glanced sideways, more curious than nervous. He looked back at the vote sheet, then at the addresses again, then at me. His voice barely left his throat. "These signatures don't live here, Minicliff number 1. The recorder captured the sentence like a line under a verdict. We both watched the waveform spike. Cindy exhaled. "Good. Now we have the county saying it." The overhead lights flickered once. A stroller squeaked past the door, the sounds of normal life colliding with our careful pile of paper. "Next steps," I said. "We notify the HOA by certified mail," she said. "We copy the county attorney. And we brief your firm's counsel on the asset path." I nodded. "This doesn't feel like a fight. It feels like a rebuild." "Same tools," she said. "Different nails." We gathered the copies, slid them into a hardback folder. I tucked the confirmation slip into the front pocket where I'd see it every time I opened the lid. The microfilm reader's lamp cooled, dimming from white to amber. At the doorway, I lifted the phone and recorded one line for myself, a reminder for when things got loud. Fraud hates cameras. Then, because Cindy raised an eyebrow, I hit record again and repeated the clerk's whisper even softer, as if saying it twice could make it permanent. "These signatures don't live here." Cliff. My phone saved the file and flashed the time. The same sentence echoed back from the tiny speaker, thin but undeniable. "These signatures don't live here." The anonymous email arrived just after midnight. "She doesn't act alone." Forged forms. Garage. Check your mailbox, Cam, from Thursday 03:15. She wasn't delivering. I read it twice, then again until the words stopped feeling real. Sarah found me still staring at the screen. "Who sent that? No name." "Just a warning," I said. "They know about our cameras." "Then we check," she said, already walking toward the living room. The old CRT monitor blinked to life. Blue glow swallowing the room. I cued Thursday's feed. Hours scrolled by in grainy silence, the empty street, the sway of our oak tree. Then, at 03:14, the motion light flicked on. A black SUV slowed by the curb. Karen stepped into the frame pastel coat, ghost white under the light. She walked straight to our mailbox, envelope in hand. Sarah whispered, "That's her." We watched in silence. Karen glanced both ways, uncapped a pen with her teeth, and began writing on the top of the box. Then she slid papers into the envelope, not out of it. She tucked it under her arm and left. "Pause," Sarah said. I froze the screen. The timestamp glared, 03:15:12. "She wasn't delivering," I said quietly. The printer on the shelf groaned awake as I hit print. The image slid out line by line. Karen's figure caught mid-motion, the envelope visible beneath her arm. Sarah leaned close. "She's planting signatures." I dialed Cindy. She answered on the first ring, voice rough but alert. "Tell me you're not joking." "Got a tip," I said. "It led us to this footage. Describe it." "She's collecting documents from other mailboxes at 3:15. We have the exact frame." "Good. Download everything 5 minutes before and after Cindy said. We'll make it Exhibit B. Intent, lives and timestamps." Sarah smiled faintly at that. "Intent, lives and timestamps," she repeated. "We'll frame it." While the footage exported, I opened a yellow pad and documented the chain pulled at 12:58 a.m. Frame 03:15. Backup to external drive. Each line tightened the knot inside me, but it was the right kind of knot, the kind you tie before a climb. "Cindy, I said you think this is enough for an injunction. It's enough to wake a judge," she replied. "Send me the clip, the still, and your prior filings. I'll push an emergency motion tonight." The CRT screen flickered its hum, filling the silence. For a moment, Karen's face turned toward the camera, a glint in her eyes as if she sensed the lens. Then the picture dissolved back into shadow. Sarah reached for my arm. She really thinks she's untouchable. Not anymore. Outside, the sprinklers hissed on a rhythm like static applause. The upload bar crawled across the screen. I copied the clip onto 2 drives and labeled one in red ink, Exhibit B Mailbox 0315. At 1:37 a.m., Cindy texted, "Filed," awaiting judge signature. Then another ping print and sign attached affidavit when order arrives. Sarah rubbed her eyes. She'll hate morning court. "Good," I said. "Maybe daylight will feel different when it's evidence." We stood at the window. The motion light clicked off, plunging the driveway into dark calm. For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint whir of the DVR saving our copy. Sarah broke the silence. "You realize this is the first time I'm not scared, because we're fighting on paper," I said. She nodded. "Paper doesn't lie." I returned to the desk and pressed record on my phone. "Statement," I said aloud, voice steadier than I expected. At 03:15, Thursday, Karen Stevens, president of Willow Creek HOA, was observed removing documents from private mailboxes. Evidence preserved on DVR and external drive. "Say it again," Sarah whispered, "for the record." 03:15. She wasn't delivering. The words hung there, equal parts confession and proof. Mini cliff number 1. The printer spit out a second, still unprompted, darker, almost artistic Karen, frozen mid-stride with the timestamp glowing like a brand. I slid both images into a clear sleeve, then placed the folder on the coffee table beside the earlier county map. The boundary pin sketch, the deed copy, and this new frame formed a perfect arc where it started, where it cracked, and now where it would break open. Cindy called again. The judge approved the temporary order. By morning, she can't touch mailboxes, post notices, or collect signatures. If she tries, the sheriff reads it to her in person. Sarah's shoulders dropped in relief. "So, tomorrow's the hearing," Cindy said. "Get some rest." When the call ended, I muted the CRT. The screen dimmed to black, our reflections faint in the glass, 2 tired faces standing over a quiet victory. I powered down the DVR, the click echoing like a gavel. The folder stayed on the table evidence in waiting. Sarah touched the top sheet, smoothing it as if it were fragile. "You think she'll stop? She'll slow down," I said. "That's enough for tonight." The motion light blinked once more outside, catching the mailbox in its beam. I watched it glow silver before darkness swallowed it again. Cliff. Into my recorder, I spoke one final line, steady and clear, 3:15. She wasn't delivering. The town hall smelled of coffee and copy toner. Rows of folding chairs faced a long table beneath buzzing fluorescent lights. A mic waited at the center, its red light steady like a heartbeat. When I tapped it, the speaker crackled a small sound that made everyone look up. Cindy leaned toward me. "Stay measured," she murmured. "Law first." I nodded, scanning the crowd. Greg sat in the second row, arms crossed. Karen Stevens, HOA, president, starched blazer smile like a blade, sat opposite him, whispering to another board member. Residents fanned themselves with printed agendas. The room felt heavy with things unsaid. The hearing officer raised his gavel. "This meeting will come to order. Agenda Item 3. Boundary disputes for Willow Creek Estates." Cindy handed me the folder. "Start with the deed," she whispered. "Let the map talk." I stepped up. The mic clicked again. "Thomas Turner Lot, 27B." I laid the old plat map on the projector. The screen flickered, displaying black survey lines on faded beige. Recorded before the HOA was incorporated. My lot's west boundary pin sits 30 feet from the curb outside your jurisdiction. Karen's pen froze mid-air. Cindy clicked to the next slide. The newer shaded map boundaries bloated like a spill. This amendment, I said, was filed last winter at 03:17 a.m. The same code stamped on the violation stake planted in my yard. The audience murmured. Someone whispered, "That's after hours." I turned another sheet over. These are the signatures from the expansion vote. 2 of the listed homeowners moved out of state last year. One's deceased. The hearing officer looked up sharply. "Are you saying these are forged?" "I'm saying they don't live here," I replied. Cindy stood calm as glass. To preserve order, she said we entered a complaint under Mr. Turner's law firm, now recorded. Exhibit A is the plat overlay. Exhibit B, time-stamped footage. Exhibit C, she lifted a blue-ribboned sheet. Notice of lien on HOA office property filed with the county clerk at 09:42 this morning. Karen jolted upright. "You filed a lien." "On our building." Cindy's tone didn't change. "Yes, fraudulently issued fees constitute damages. Until those are resolved, the office is under lien protection." Gasps rippled through the seats. Greg gave a low whistle. The hearing officer leaned forward. "Ms. Stevens, do you wish to respond?" Karen straightened. "We acted on legal advice," Cindy cut in. "Whose?" Karen hesitated. "A consultant." "Horizon West Management." Cindy smiled faintly. "Not a law firm, then." The clerk logged notes, pen scratching like a metronome. I returned to the mic. "My cameras caught Ms. Stevens at my mailbox writing not delivering at 03:15 Thursday morning. Those frames were entered as Exhibit B. Her actions align with the falsified timestamp in the plat revision." The hearing officer adjusted his glasses. "Do you have a copy?" Cindy handed him the glossy print. The room fell silent while he studied it. The projector hum filled the pause. Finally, he said, "This image shows your signature in the overlay margin, Ms. Stevens. Do you deny writing it?" Karen swallowed hard. "That's a copy error." The clerk flipped a sheet. "Original still has the same mark. Minnie Cliff number 1. The crowd began whispering low electric, the sound of patience breaking. Cindy leaned into the mic. "Neighbors, this isn't about paint color, it's about ownership. We've lived by the code, now the code will live by us. Paper outlives noise." The quote hung in the air like a verdict. Karen tried again. "The HOA only enforces community standards." "Not across property lines," I said. "You can't annex a deed." The hearing officer rapped the table once. "Enough. The evidence is clear." He gestured to the clerk. "Read the record." The clerk's voice echoed plat, amendment unauthorized. Signatures invalid. Expansion vote void. HOA jurisdiction on Lot 27 Binon. Greg chuckled under his breath. Guess the line held. Cindy glanced at me. "Now comes the correction." She held up a small stack of papers. "We request the county strike the invalid record and remove Mr. Turner's address from any HOA listings. Per the injunction granted at dawn, the HOA shall cease enforcement until further audit." The hearing officer nodded. "Approved." "So ordered. Minnie Cliff number 2. The mic popped as the clerk leaned in, voice steady. "For public record, the county recognizes no HOA authority over Lot 27B. Karen stared at the table motionless. Someone in the back whispered, "Finally." Cindy gathered her files. "We'll forward certified copies to your office," she said evenly. The hearing officer looked around the room. Anything further, I stepped closer to the mic one last time. "Yes. There's an online listing showing my address under pending HOA integration. I want that gone." The clerk opened a browser on the wall display. Sure enough, there it was glowing like a bruise. Karen fumbled her tablet. "That's just a placeholder. Remove it," the officer said. His tone flattened into the record. "On mic, remove the listing." A hush swept through the hall. The red light on the mic glowed brighter, capturing every word. Cindy exhaled softly. "That's one for the archives." I looked around the room, the neighbors, the maps, the faint buzz of light. For the first time in months, the air felt balanced again. The gavel came down. The sound wasn't loud, but it was final. "Cliff." As the session adjourned, I turned off the mic. Its red light faded slowly like the end of a storm. The sheriff's cruiser turned into my driveway just as the sun climbed above the mailbox. Its tires whispered over gravel, quiet but final. Cindy's sedan pulled up behind him, morning light glinting off the metal corner of a red legal folder on her dashboard. The sheriff stepped out first, boots crisp on concrete. "Mr. Turner," he said, nodding once, "we're here to serve an injunction." Cindy joined him, coat folded over one arm, file pressed tight to her chest. "Filed and clocked at 6:12 a.m., she said. "This one carries the seal." I wiped my hands on a rag and took a breath. The mower was still warm beside me, its handle slick with dew. "Then let's read it right," I said. The sheriff opened the folder. A faint smell of ink rose from the pages. Injunction, Order County Court of Record. Effective immediately freezing assets and operations at the Willow Creek HOA office address, pending audit. He paused and looked up. "That clear enough for you, Mr. Turner?" "Clear as the sunrise," I said. From down the street, the HOA's silver SUV idled at the corner. Karen sat behind the wheel, sunglasses on phone pressed to her cheek. She didn't wave. She didn't blink. Cindy flipped the top page and pointed to the signature, stamped and entered. "The sheriff will affix the seal at the clerk's steps. You'll witness." I nodded, though my pulse was already in my throat. The sound of the stamp pad thunking as he tested it felt like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. "Grab the red folder labeled Keys," Cindy said. I walked back into the garage. The morning light sliced across the bench tools, aligned a cup of cold diner coffee beside the wrench roll. The folder sat waiting, corners worn from use. Inside were the office spare keys we'd recovered from the public directory weeks ago, one small proof of how deep this went. When I came back, the sheriff was already at the gate. He raised the document, voice firm. "For the record, service of court injunction under docket number Piermont 1207. The mic on his vest clicked. Cindy stood beside him, steady as an anchor. Karen's SUV eased closer, tires crunching softly over the curb. "Read it," I said. The sheriff obliged, tone even official. "By authority of the county court, this order restricts all HOA activity related to non-member lots, secures its office property, and transfers custody of its records for audit." Karen's car door opened halfway, then closed again. She stayed inside. The sheriff pressed the seal to the paper. Thunk. The sound carried through the still air. He pressed it again for verification. Thunk. 2 beats. 1 law, 1 record. Cindy looked at me. "You ready to close this loop? Been ready since she planted that stake." The sheriff handed me a carbon copy. "For your file." We formed a slow convoy cruiser, Cindy, then me. Karen followed distance-measured engine, humming like restraint. The county building rose on the hill square and certain. The courthouse clock read 9:02. We parked by the curb where the flag rippled without wind. Inside, fluorescent light washed everything in pale calm. The clerk looked up as we approached. Another injunction morning. "Final one," Cindy said. "HOA, fraud case docket, Farton 1207. The clerk flipped open his logbook. "Stamp stations ready." He positioned the order on the counter and pressed the heavy dater. Thunk. The seal darkened against the ribbon. Filed at 9:05. Karen entered, then her heels sharp on tile. "You can't seize our office," she said. "We have volunteers' equipment records." Cindy didn't flinch. "You mean evidence?" she replied. The sheriff rested one hand on the counter. "Ms. Stevens, you're not under arrest, but your office is under court custody until audit completion." Karen's jaw tightened. "We didn't falsify anything." "Then transparency won't hurt," Cindy said. The clerk slid over a small brown envelope, the one labeled Office Keys Records Closet. "Recovered from public directory," he explained. Karen blinked. "That's private property." "No," Cindy corrected. "That's public filing misused." The sheriff lifted the envelope. The keys clinked softly, metallic and final. "This will secure the premises." Karen's shoulders sagged. "What happens now?" "We proceed to the office," Cindy said. "You're welcome to observe." I followed as we stepped outside. The air smelled of cut grass and exhaust. A small crowd had gathered at the steps. Neighbors' reporters the curious. Cindy held up the injunction. By court order, Willow Creek HOA's office property and records are now under audit. Access is suspended until reviewed. A few claps rose from the crowd. Someone muttered, "About time." Karen's face hardened, but she said nothing. The sheriff unlocked the office door. The knob turned with a faint metallic sigh. Inside, the scent of toner and lemon polish drifted out. Desks lined the room, papers stacked in uneven towers. He stepped forward and announced recording entry for service of order. His mic clicked again. He set the paper on the main desk and pressed the portable seal. Thunk! The impression bled red across the margin. Cindy opened her notebook. Inventory, deeds, plats, pending accounts, digital backups. She listed each aloud. The sheriff nodded at every line. I stood near the doorway watching sunlight spill across the keys in his hand. They glinted, cold, new, unclaimed. "Say it," Cindy said softly. I took a breath and said, "Process beats pressure." Her smile was brief but real. "That's on record." The sheriff turned to Karen. "You are now served, Ms. Stevens. All operations are frozen until further notice." Karen lowered her eyes. "Understood." The sheriff closed the folder, tapped the seal once more for formality. Thunk. Cliff. His voice filled the hallway, firm and final. Order served. Outside, the courthouse bell rang, once echoing down Main Street. The crowd began to disperse, but I stayed until the last sound faded. The paper in my hand felt warm, alive, proof that sometimes justice doesn't shout. It signs, stamps, and holds. The church basement lights hummed like bees in winter. Metal chairs scraped tile. A steel coffee urn hissed and burbled the air, steeped in paper cups and powdered creamer. Someone taped a fresh agenda to the corkboard pushpins, popping like small nails. Cindy stood at my shoulder, a hand on the mic. "Closure," she said. "Not combat. Law first, same as before." I nodded. The keys, our last prop, sat on a folding table in a labeled tray, office sealed chain. Tag crimped and official. End state. The room smelled of floor wax, old hymnals, and relief no one wanted to say out loud. The board sat along the wall. Karen was there, gray blazer, buttoned high eyes down. She hadn't spoken since the order. Tonight she wouldn't. The clerk from window 1 had brought a ledger the size of a phone book. Refund register, Willow Creek. Black letters stamped so deep you could feel them through the cover. The moderator tapped the mic. Click. "We'll reconvene," he said. "Purpose, acknowledgement, and distribution." Cindy pressed the mic into my hand. "You start," she whispered. I stepped forward. The cable tugged my sleeve. The red light steadied. Thomas Turner. Lot 27B. I looked at the ledger at the room at the urn steaming under fluorescent buzz. The court record stands. The office is frozen. Tonight is about making neighbors whole. The clerk opened the ledger. Paper breathed. He read voice, flat and clean. On the record, apology from Willow Creek Residential Community Association to residents contacted in error. Notices issued without authority are withdrawn. Fees assessed are reversed. A woman 2 rows back wiped her eyes. Greg sat beside her, hands clasped like he was holding something fragile. Cindy took the mic, set her binder down, and turned to the board. "We will read the acknowledgement into the minutes, then issue checks in the order listed. 3 seconds of silence, then we move." No one objected. The moderator nodded. Cindy read each word measured. "We acknowledge attempted enforcement beyond our jurisdiction. We regret the distress caused. We will cooperate with audit and correct public records." She looked to the clerk. "Enter it." He stamped the page. Thunk. Mini Cliff number 1. For a breath, nothing else moved. Just the stamp mark cooling and the fluorescent ballast whispering like a faraway radio. Cindy raised the mic again. "Refund, ledger, release." The clerk lifted a stack of checks. He called names. Johnson, Klein, Mendoza. Hands reached paper-slid signatures scratched. Each check landed with a soft thud, small verdicts paid in full. When he read Greg's last name, Greg paused, glanced at me and nodded once, grateful and stubborn at the same time. I took a step back and found Karen's reflection in the window glass, small blurred, held there by light and duty. She didn't lift her eyes. Cindy leaned toward me, voice low. "Say what the record can't feel." I brought the mic close. "We keep our disagreements in daylight. We count the paper. We fix the line. Accountability is public." A rumble moved through the chairs. Not applause, yet something warmer, older. The kind of sound men make in a garage when a seized bolt finally gives. The clerk reached a tab midway down the ledger. "Turner, lot 27B. He looked up. "There is no refund due, no fees paid." "Right," I said. "But there is one more thing to return." Cindy nodded at the tray. I picked up the keys, the chain tag cool in my palm. I held them up, not like a trophy, but like a receipt. These were cataloged under the order. They remain under audit, not power. They don't unlock threats anymore. The moderator spoke. "On the record, keys remain sealed pending audit completion." I set them down again, the chain kissing metal. Chime. Cindy glanced across the room. "Before we close, we acknowledge those who kept the record steady." She pointed at the table. "Plat, overlay, vote sheets, injunction, ledger." Her eyes found the board line. "And we acknowledge the lesson paper outlives noise." My chest eased an inch. I looked at Sarah by the coffee urn. She lifted her cup. I lifted my hand. For the first time in months, the angle of our shoulders felt level. The moderator cleared his throat. "We will observe 3 seconds of silence for the stress and worry caused." We stood. 1. I heard a chair creak and then go still. 2. The coffee urn breathed. 3. The room released air together, the sound of a chord resolving. Applause came like rain, steady and clean. No whoops, no jeers. Just palms speaking the only language that mattered here. I felt it in my ribs. Greg leaned in stage low. "You started this." "We finished it together," I said. He grinned. Finally, someone fought back. I didn't repeat him. I didn't have to. The words settled on the ledger where they belonged. The clerk raised the last envelope. "Final batch." Cindy nodded. "Distribute." He called the remaining names. The soft thuds continued, check after check. The ledger swallowed signatures and dates, turning air into record. The morning sun caught the edge of the bronze like a match struck slow. Willow Creek, title, Restored County. Record, 4/12/07. It gleamed beside the boundary pin, clean and final, the metal warm under my thumb. From the porch radio, a steady voice said, "Records never forget." The words rolled through static, caught on the wind, and disappeared over the rooftops. Sarah was setting plates near the grill. Greg tended the coals like he'd been waiting years to light them. The scent of hickory and sauce mixed with the sweetness of cut grass. Cindy's sedan pulled up to the curb trunk stacked with binders and one brown envelope. She waved. "Morning, gentlemen of record. Morning, council of closure." Greg answered. She laughed, leaning against the porch rail. "County confirmed the transfer 15 minutes ago. HOA office trust is dissolved. Everything's back to public record." I looked down at the small plaque again. "So it's over. It's on paper," Cindy said. "That's better than over. That's permanent." Sarah joined us, handing me a mug. "Coffee, not champagne," she said. "Feels right." The porch swing creaked behind her, a sound we hadn't heard in months. It was the music of ordinary life, slow, wooden, human. Mini Cliff Number 1. Across the street, Karen's old house sat empty. The for sale sign leaned crooked, half-shadowed by the oak. Its stake was splitting where rain had worked through the grain. Greg nodded toward it. "She moved out last week. Rumor says the board's folding too." Cindy took a slow sip from her cup. "They'll rebuild. Maybe better this time." Maybe I said, but the record's clean now. A truck passed horn echoing through the cul-de-sac. Kids on bikes waved and circled back to stare at the new marker. One of them asked, "Is that like a trophy?" Greg grinned. "No kid. That's a receipt." Sarah laughed softly. "Best kind of award." Cindy pulled a paper from her folder, the official transfer order seal embossed, date, bold at the top. County clerk entered this at 8:02 a.m., she said. Office property reverts to the public record. Title jurisdiction restored. I read the first line. By authority vested in the court and clerk, the matter of Turner vs. Willow Creek HOA is hereby concluded. Mind if I frame it? I asked. Already made you a copy, she said, slipping it into a plastic sleeve. Keep it dry. Greg poured sauce over the ribs and gestured toward the boundary pin. Never thought a little metal rod would start all this. Not the rod, I said. The line, Minnie, Cliff number 2. A camera from the local paper clicked somewhere near the fence, reporter crouched low, lens glinting. Cindy smiled for the frame. Make sure you get the plaque and not my shoes, she called. Got it, the reporter said. The shutter sounded again. Then the wind moved through, lifting the smell of BBQ toward the sky. Sarah touched my arm. How's it feel? Quiet, I said, like the noise finally cashed out. She nodded. Law won, not rage. Behind us, the porch swing creaked again, steady and slow. Greg set 3 plates on the table, sliding one toward me. To paper, he said. Cindy raised her cup. To process. Sarah lifted hers. To peace. I held mine last, looking at the plaque, the sunlight reflecting clean over its face. To all of it, I said. Cindy smiled. Careful, Turner. That sounds like a toast. Maybe it is, I replied. Finally, time. The reporter asked for one last photo. Mind standing by the pin. We stepped onto the grass. The earth felt firmer than it had all spring. Sarah rested a hand on my shoulder. Cindy adjusted the frame. The plaque caught the light just as the shutter clicked metal shadow sky. The moment froze exactly the way it should not triumph, but balance. Greg turned to the group, wiping his hands on a towel. You realize this started because she tried to fine you for grass height. Yeah, I said. Guess the roots ran deeper. The crowd that had drifted from nearby porches began clapping again, not loud, just certain. Someone shouted, About time! Another added. Finally, someone fought back. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The bronze plate spoke for me, sunlight filling every letter until the glare erased the past. Cindy closed her folder. Well, that's it? You're free, Mr. Turner. I took another sip of coffee, savoring the bitter and the sweet. No, I said quietly. We're all free. The radio crackled again behind us, same voice, softer now. Records never forget. I looked up the camera lens, catching the reflection of the sky in the plaque's polished curve. For a second, the blue looked endless. The bronze plaque caught the first light like a held breath, its seal still warm from yesterday's ceremony. Across the street, a new family planted flowers where the HOA sign once stood. I ran my fingers over the raised letters, remembering how each stamp and notice turned noise into order. Justice wasn't loud. It was steady, written in the quiet ink of proof. Sarah handed me coffee, and Greg waved from the curb. We'd redrawn a line, not out of anger, but to make things right. Finally, someone fought back. Share your HOA story below your map might help someone redraw theirs.